Honorable former Minister and Member of Parliament, Mr. Chidambaram, respected Lieutenant General, Mr. Huda, distinguished guests, excellencies, friends and colleagues. It gives me great pleasure to open today's discussion on Lieutenant General Huda's report titled India's National Security Strategy. And we as think tankers always like to complicate it further, so we have now decided to title this discussion this afternoon as a debate on a new security manifesto that India must seek to create for itself. It is certainly a timely moment to debate this important subject, and it is also a moment which has seen a needless polarization of this very important conversation. Shifts in the global balance of power and the rapid advances in emerging technologies and actors are straining the existing norms and rules that have underpinned the international system and indeed international security. They have also changed the ways in which we assess actors and threats that are inimical to our interests. The emergence of new political geographies recently, such as the Indo-Pacific, or now the new supercontinent such as Eurasia, are compelling us to rethink our own grand strategy and diplomacy in this century. The 20th century mental maps must give way to more nuanced 21st century postures. The conversations about these must be had now with urgency and openness. The discussions we are hosting today is an attempt towards this and is another one in the series of conversations ORF has initiated recently on national security. I will leave today's debate to this eminent panel and speakers that we have invited today, but allow me to use my privilege as host to offer a few views on why this document is important. The General Huda's document is important and what it signifies for Indian policy making. First, the political discourse after the Pulwama and Balakot attacks have taught us that robust national security policy is necessary if India is to insulate its national interest from the 5-year electoral cycles. We must be able to separate the interest of the state from political interests. Unless we do this, all political parties will naturally infect India's national security calculus with their own priorities and tactical agendas. The core element of any worthwhile national security policy are the institutionalization of the agenda, the cataloging of learnings, and allowing space for creativity and innovation as both contexts and times change. It has to remain an executive duty with robust parliamentary oversight and engagement, and now, more recently, it also must pass muster in the court of public opinion. For example, the surgical strike and air raids these past 2 years were arguably unconventional and disruptive tactics, and history may well testify to their efficacy or failure. But without a long-term doctrine guiding and aiding such decisions, the risk is that they may well remain a spontaneous response decided by individuals rather than a sustained national response to cross-border terrorism. Even in the heydays of Pax Americana, the US was seized of the necessity to institutionalize its national security strategy. In 1947, and then again in 1986, the US reconfigured its state apparatus to ensure that one coherent vision and strategy guide its armed forces and all branches of the state, including the executive office in the West Wing of the White House. India cannot aspire to don the mantle of a leading power unless it possesses such a vision for itself. Second, these events have also taught us that the presumption that a coherent strategy exists is insufficient. For years, we have heard whispers of a cold start doctrine, and we continue to dissect and debate the validity of a no first use policy. We believe that there must exist some file in the corridors of South Bloc that define India's strategy at large. But this belief is no longer tenable. It is time to create a framework that is visible and one that is debatable. India will be a $5 trillion economy when we fight the next elections. In 2024, we are moving to a $5 trillion economy. The framing of national security policy, thus, cannot be driven by murmurings of the mandarins on Raisina Hill. A young, aspirational, and social media savvy population will demand greater transparency and accountability on national security decisions. Opacity also lends itself to bad tactical decisions on the front lines. Every serving officer and arm of the state must possess sufficient knowledge of the doctrinal underpinnings of their operations and indeed of their conduct. Third, Hopefully, this document from the Congress party will catalyze the need for similar policies from all Indian political parties. And we will hear more on this from Mr. Chidambaram when he intervenes this afternoon. Political parties must create a grassroots debate and consensus. Of course, in typical Indian style, it will be loud and polarizing. However, this is the democratic approach India must embrace, even in the sector of national security. It is given that propositions of a single party cannot form the basis for a national consensus. However, it is a good starting point capable of incubating a forward-looking debate. Finally, any national security policy that does emerge must be a living document. In other words, it must cement a certain respect for the core values that the country fights for, but must be flexible enough to adapt to new structural changes in the security environment. National security is not framed in isolation. It is a proactive response to our strategic ecosystem, the postures of our adversary, shifts in technology and weapon systems, and indeed our own human and institutional capital. All major democratic powers mandate a review of their national security strategies by law. The US Goldwater-Nicholas Act of 1986, for example, mandates that White House produce an annual report to the Congress on national security strategy of the United States. Our national security apparatus must possess the capacity and agency to acknowledge, comprehend, and act on change. Again, this cannot be left to the whims of the party in power or to any individual or single institution. It must be a collective, non-partisan, whole-of-the-state effort. I am sure that the discussions this afternoon will inform this and illuminate potential next steps. To kick off this afternoon, let me invite Lieutenant General Huda to deliver his address on his report. We are very thankful that he's traveled from Chandigarh this morning to be with us today. With a career spanning over 4 decades in the armed forces and many awards received along the way, there are very few individuals capable of commanding the experience and intellect required to produce such an important document. It is a testament to his lifelong service that he continues to actively participate in and shape India's security debates even post-retirement.